Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're going to get started in just a minute. While we're waiting, if you'd like to say hello in the chat box, let us know where you're joining us from. Again, welcome, everyone. We're going to get started in just a minute. We're saying hello in the chat box right now. Again, hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started. This webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be made available on NSLA's website. We encourage you all to interact with your fellow attendees in the chat box, but if you have a question that you want asked and answered live, please add it to the Q&A box as we're going along. With that, I'll turn things over to Aaron.
All right. Well, hello. Can everyone hear me? Hello. Welcome, everyone. We are so excited that you're joining us today for our final day celebrating National Summer Learning Week. My name is Aaron Dworkin. I'm the CEO of National Summer Learning Association. And today's theme is about literacy and working with libraries and promoting literacy with young people. And we're calling it Dive into a Book Adventure. And we want to thank our sponsor, Lexile Framework, for reading, for sponsoring today's webinar and being a supporter of summer learning and NSLA year-round. And we have an amazing moderator and panelists, and Liz McKee who you're going to meet, and we'll introduce all the other panelists with resources and expertise and tremendous leaders in our field. All week long, we've been trying to lift up why summer learning matters, why now more than ever it does, and coming out of COVID and in a response to what young people may have missed during their school year, but also as a way to help them get ready and reconnected with their teachers and their peers and get excited for the fall. We've covered a lot of ground. Every day's had a theme, from STEM to health and wellness, to arts, to careers. And what cuts across all of them, as we were just discussing with the panel, is literacy. You can't do any of those things unless you have high fluency in literacy, and it's such an important piece of our lives. So we're gonna talk more. We're very fortunate as well to have Ian Rosenblum, who's the Acting Assistant Secretary for Elementary and Secondary Education at the U.S. Department of Education, which has just been a tremendous leader and bringing all of us, the Department of Ed and Secretary Cardona and his entire team have been lifting up the importance of summer learning and being a huge supporter to all of us and to NSLA. And so before we get started, I just wanted to let Ian come on and say a few remarks and share his thoughts for today and why this issue matters so much to him. Ian?
Thank you so much, and good afternoon or good morning, depending where you're joining from. On behalf of Secretary Cardona and the U.S. Department of Education, we are so pleased to be celebrating Summer Learning Week with you. We're also grateful to the National Summer Learning Association for all of your work to support summer learning and enrichment programs across the country. The American Rescue Plan provides nearly $122 billion to support our students in schools, and it includes a historic investment in evidence-based summer programs that address the needs of the students most impacted by the pandemic. With the partnership of the National Summer Learning Association and so many others, the department has brought together more than 40 states for a summer learning and enrichment collaborative. We are so inspired by the way states and school districts are using American Rescue Plan and other pandemic resources in partnerships with community-based organizations to provide fun, engaging enrichment opportunities for students this summer. It's such a powerful way to re-engage students as we get ready for the new school year. I'm especially thrilled to get to welcome you to the Dive into a Book Adventure. The evidence is overwhelming on the importance of literacy in summer programs and other interventions. And as a parent to a 4.5-year-old, I love seeing every day how the books we're reading this summer expand my own child's imagination, connection to the broader community, and eagerness to learn. Thank you again, and have a great rest of the summer.
Thank you so much, Ian. We're really grateful to you and your team and Secretary Cardona for your amazing and continuous leadership and investment in all of us to do great work and to reach more young people. I also just want to give a shout out. Secretary Cardona went above and beyond and recorded a public service announcement that is airing on 800+ radio stations, courtesy of iHeartRadio stations, iHeartRadio. So be on the lookout for that message. But again, just showing what it looks like to have so much leadership, both from the local level up to the national level. So thank you again, Ian. I think we also have one of our panelists who can't go as quickly is Marin. So before I get to you, Leslie, do we have time for me to share a few slides, or should we go to Marin right away?
I think we can go to your slides. Okay,
thanks. So I just want to give a little context, who we are, if this is one of your first times joining NSLA's webinar. I apologize if you have, you'll hear a couple things again, but it's just important that we frame and put some context to all our work. But NSLA is an organization that's been around for more than 25 years, focused on combating summer learning loss, now COVID learning loss, and closing the achievement and opportunity gaps that research shows grow most dramatically between lower and higher income students over the summer months. Our vision is to ensure that all young people in America, regardless of background, zip code, income level, have access and can afford to participate in a high quality summer learning experience every year of their lives. Next slide. So briefly, I just want to remind folks what we're talking about. When we talk about summer learning, we think not only the unique and underleveraged time, but really summer is almost a metaphor for inequity. We know that some folks get so many opportunities who have resources to do them, and then there are millions of young people and families that just can't access them. So we're trying to stop that. But summer is also a time of tremendous opportunity and entrepreneurship and great ideas. And this federal funding that's now coming to our communities is allowing so many people to be innovative. So when we think about summer, we say there are the four I's of summer. And the first I stands for improvement, and the idea not just to help young people, but that all great quality summer programs also double up as a form of staff training and professional development. So we see lots of program models where the young people are learning new skills, but so are the adults, and they take those with them into the school year. It's also a time for innovation, and this year NSLA launched a new summer innovation fellowship for educators and leaders of color, especially who have great ideas, who wanted to get things started and off the ground. And so what we see is summer is almost like the R&D, the research and development time for the world of education. And you test out new ideas, perfect them, and then you can bring them to scale later on. It's also a time to break down artificial silos in education. So we say time for integration. During the year, we all want to work together with school districts, nonprofits, government youth-serving agencies, even corporations. But it's hard and everyone's busy. But in the summer, you have time to really practice and perfect those partnerships. And if they go well, you could actually carry them on into the year. And finally, as we all know, all the summer learning programs and the ones you're going to hear about and the practices, it's a time of tremendous and real immediate and lasting impact, both at the national level, as we're seeing now with, again, the American Rescue Plan dollars and policies, but also, at the state level, community level, and finally at the student level. And that's what we're really all here about, is how do we create an experience that young people have that they learn right now this summer, but it's skills and it's mentors and it's relationships and experiences that they'll take and decades later can say, hey, I'm doing what I'm doing in my life because of the summer experience I had. That's what we're all in position to do. So next slide. One of the last resources we hope you'll share with your families and the folks you partner with and serve is a new website called DiscoverSummer.org. Has a program search engine with almost 20,000 programs that in your community that you could find this summer, but also tremendous resources, including some from Lexile and others, finding a meal, finding a mentor, math resources, STEM resources, literacy resources. So I hope you'll check that out and share that site. And then finally, next slide. We have a few big things coming up, and we hope everyone who's on this call and the folks you work with and partner with will consider coming to our national conference in November, which we're going to push to be, it'll be safe as possible, but we'll be in person in Washington, D.C. We think it'll be our biggest and most important and impactful conference, November 8th through 10th. If you sign up now, there's the early bird registration rate, but we're gonna have amazing speakers and sessions and leaders. So we hope you'll come be with us. We also have a library and literacy cohort that Liz McKee, our moderator, leads. So if you're interested in having more conversations and learning from others, you can join that. That meets year round and we'll be at the conference. And finally, our tagline is that a great summer program needs to have their planning start in September. And you can't just come up in May and April and have a few extra dollars and say, quick, let's throw together a good program. All great programs that are high quality are intentional and they're strategic and they're built into the year-round program plan of whatever organization is sponsoring it. So that's something we're here to provide resources and best practices, and we do that in many ways. So if you're interested and you need help, we're here for you. So with all that, I'm going to introduce Liz McKee, who's going to be our moderator, and then if she would like to introduce the other panelists, and I know Marin doesn't have as much time. So Liz, you're an amazing leader on literacy, had a long career at Chicago Public Libraries, Urban Library Council, Clinton Foundation, huge reputation in this field nationally, and we're very lucky to have her as a leader and partner to NSLA. Liz?
Oh, Aaron, thank you. We all feel lucky to have you and to have NSLA as both the beacon and the call for summer learning and the great impact of summer learning all year long. And hi, everyone. We're so excited you're here today. We're going to start by lifting up a youth voice. So Marin, if you could join us, we thought it would be more fun to have an actual kid join us today than just have adults. So here's Marin on why summer reading has mattered to her. Marin, thanks for being with us.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Marin. I'm 18 years old and I'm from Chicago. I actually grew up surrounded by books. My mom's a children's librarian, so I grew up with stacks and stacks of picture books. And I used to actually read in the library window nooks at the Harold Washington Public Library. I participated in a lot of summer reading challenges. But the reason I love being part of the Chicago Public Library summer reading is the books. I love the access to books and then also being able to hang out with the cool teen volunteers, which I really thought was amazing as a kid. My favorite part about summer reading is the freedom to be able to pick books that you want to read. I know a lot of my other peers actually resent reading because school has made reading feel like a burden, but being able to read in summer and being able to choose the books that you want to read really has allowed me to become a lover of reading. Reading makes me feel safe. Reading brings me to different worlds, and the characters that I meet in the books I read are not only companions, but also parts of myself. My family actually makes fun of the way I read. I read like I eat chocolate. I gobble up words, and my eyes actually dart so quickly back and forth that my twin likes to make fun of me. Most of my summers are spent reading, like I mentioned. About like 90% of my downtime is spent reading. When my mom thinks I'm just playing on my phone, I'm actually reading, whether it's a published novel by a reputable publishing company or online fan fiction from an anonymous source. I just really love reading. My mom and I actually go on annual summer reading trips, and this year we're going to Boulder, Colorado. Reading has been really important, especially during the pandemic. Last summer, when there was nothing to do and nowhere to go, the highlight of my summer was definitely going to the library. Every Friday, I would walk to my local public library and I would check out a minimum of 5 books. I think without that, I would not have gotten through the summer. I loved being able to just be around books and have them keep me company, especially when there was nothing else to do. So yeah, thanks.
Wow, Marin, you're a reader's dream. Thank you for joining us, and good luck in college. I think Marin is a perfect example of a kid who fills their lives with books, and there are lots of kids like her across the country. And there's certainly they have all been impacted by authors. And so next we thought it would be just so wonderful to have a chance for you to hear not only from an author, but to be read to, because being read to and being read aloud to is one of the most critical forms of building literacy. So I am so pleased to introduce to you one of my favorite authors, Sandra McAllister, who's joining us from her studio in Vermont today. Hi, Sandra, there you are.
Hello.
What a backdrop. I love that.
The world of.
Sandra, your books matter so much to so many kids, and I think they really build such meaningful connections. And I believe you're going to share something with us today, right?
I am. I'm delighted to read my story. My dog has decided to talk as well. That's Olive in the background. I'm going to read my book, You. So here we go. You. Life is a big adventure just waiting for you. Give it all you've got. There's nothing you can't do. Never stop exploring, because life would be boring. Be clever and curious, just like a cat. Ask lots of questions about this and that. Look at life from different points of view. Turn things upside down if it suits you. Wake up in the morning and holler, hip, hip, hooray. Every day is inviting you to smile, shine, and play. Climb great tall mountains and reach for the sky. You might fall down, but then you'll fly. Remember, you can be anything you really want to be, like a pilot, a poet, or someone who lives in a tree. Try not to say words like I can't, I won't, and I should. Instead, think, I can, I will, I did, and I'm good. Don't be afraid to make a mistake or two. It might lead you to discover something new. Dream big and remember to follow your heart. Believe in yourself because you're really so smart. When you grow up and do all that you do, the most important thing is just to be you. The end.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you.
Oh,
You are
sure.
the author of so many books. I know personally, Everybody Goes Nighty Night has been a favorite, and I give it to new parents to help promote some good sleep habits.
Exactly.
And Not So Small at All. I just love the message in your books. I think you could really be the anthem for all summer learning programs. It's really embodies everything we're all trying to do and instill in our youth in the summertime.
Thank you so much. That is so beautiful. I think we really want to just celebrate these kids that are so amazing and give them all the opportunities that we can so that they can do what they do, which is grow to be who they're meant to be. We just have to create that environment for them to grow in. And you're doing that. And I'm so excited to be a part of this webinar today.
Well, thank you. You were sharing before we started that you actually work with your public library and you also have your hand in a summer learning program. Can you tell us a little about it?
Yes, I work with the children's librarian here in Vermont in North Bennington, and she's amazing. And what I love so much is not only do I go in and read to the children and we do activities, and also there's book bags and summer projects that she creates for the kids in the community, but she's also worked to create this format called the Story Walk. So all throughout COVID, we put books up throughout a local park, and kids and families came in droves as they came outside, to take walks where they were socially distancing, and the stories were beginning to unfold throughout the walk. And I just think it's an enormous gift and such a great format to extend the book from the page from our lap to the environment, and that's been great. And also this summer, because of all of the availability of federal funding, we've been able to combine a program that we do year-round with our local elementary school, where we teach gardening, healthy eating, and education, around that, with a summer lake program that's here with swimming. So in the morning, all of the students, the campers, they go to the lake and they learn swimming and environmental studies, and then they walk to our gardens in the afternoon, where they're planting, harvesting, making food, and now sharing it with the local Meals on Wheels for people who are really struggling with food insecurity in Vermont. So it's kind of been a full circle experience to be involved in the
beautiful.
summer program.
Really beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for your commitment to helping kids. Yeah, and you talked about story walks. I think we'll talk about them a little bit more later when Nikki joins us. But I think I want to just back up for a minute and sort of set some context for today about literacy and summer learning. Like Erin said, it really all ties together the other components of summer learning, because you can't do much if you can't read and if you don't have literacy. And while literacy has many expanded definitions right now, today we're really talking about books and reading. And we know that there are so many reasons why reading in summer matters. We heard from a kid who's grown up with books, and certainly I was touched to hear how important reading was to her during COVID, and particularly last summer during COVID. But we also know that it's a skill, and like any skill, you need to practice it, or you can lose your skills. We know from research through National Summer Learning Association and others that kids can lose up to 3 months of reading skills during the summertime if they don't practice. So I always used to say to kids, it's like basketball or baseball or anything else. You have to keep working at it. So skills is part of it. Love is really important. I'm a librarian and a reader and a book lover. So I know that summer reading has a different kind of effect on us. Right now in my local bookstore, there's a big table marketed as beach reads. And I'm sure everyone on this knows about beach reads. So those are high interest books. Okay, for me, that's like chick lit and spy novels that I may not find time to read in the rest of the year. And for all of us, for kids and adults alike, summer offers us this time to take a break from academic reading or the heavier tomes, maybe in book clubs or whatever adults are reading. But it's a time for kids to really pursue their interests through books. And in my mind, that's what builds a real reader and makes reading become just a lifelong habit, is just loving it. So seeing yourself in a book, loving that world that it transports you to. I believe that fun and joy should never be separated from learning. And so the kind of fun books that kids read, all those Captain Underpants books or Magic Treehouse books that they're reading in the summertime, that really propels and accelerates learning through joy. And goodness knows all our kids really need and deserve some joy after the last year and a half we've all had. So skills, love, and then I think empathy is the other really critical part of summer reading. It can really help us build bridges to understanding others and build empathy in our kids. We see there's renewed interest in social emotional learning and how that empathy is so important to our kids. And programs like summer learning programs with literacy cooked into them offer reluctant readers a way to get interested in books that they may never have found before. My motto at the library used to be, come for the Lego club and leave with a Minecraft book. So this can help generate an interest and a love not only in reading, but in places like the public library, which are so immensely important as community supports and democratizing sources of information and third places for kids and families. So I'm going to encourage all of you attending and panelists too, to put in the chat what you're reading this summer. I'm talking and I can't talk and chew gum, so I'm going to tell you I'm reading kind of weightier book and then a lighter book. So I'm reading America for Americans, A History of Xenophobia in the United States by Erica Lee. I highly recommend it. It's the history I didn't get growing up. And it's part of my anti-racist reading this year. And then I'm also reading, my lighter book is called No, I Don't Want to Be in a Book Club by Virginia Ironside. And it's just funny and kind of a fun summer read. So please add in the chat what you're reading. And as you're doing that, I'm going to introduce our panel to us. So panel, you can come on screen. And oh, good. First in the lineup, there's Sarah Plumatillo, who's the National Director of Education Partnerships and 21st Century Community Learning Supports with Right Brain. And at the bottom of my screen, I don't know where it shows up on everyone else's screen, is Nikki Ferreira Hassani, who's the Partnerships Manager at the Clinton Foundation's Too Small to Fail initiative and my friend and colleague. And last but never least, Bernard Remming, who's a program manager at the Literacy Lab and works in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So welcome to you all. And Sandra, you're here. So thank you for staying on with us. So welcome to you all. This is such a wonderful panel. I'm hoping maybe all of you would just give a minute or two introduction to our audience about your organizations and your role in them. So maybe we'll go backwards and start with Bernard.
Thanks, Liz. Happy to be here. So I am Bernard Remming, and I'm work with the Literacy Lab, and I'm the program manager for our Leading Men Fellowship program. So the Literacy Lab, we are focused on early literacy. We believe literacy is a human right. But the Leading Men Fellowship program, though, has a unique twist where we focus on pre-K and early literacy, but we hire young men of color to be our early literacy tutors. And so we're hiring young men 18 to 24 to go in K-4 classrooms to learn how to read and write, but then they also are getting support in terms of their own development as young men and through, I call it like adult one-on-one class, like financial literacy, college and career guidance, and really just helping them with the big term goal of how can we encourage them to become future educators. So we're tackling early literacy, but we're also working on diversifying the teaching workforce.
I love that. I love that two-prong important impact. I can't wait to dive in with you, Bernard. Thanks for being here. And Nikki, welcome.
Hi, Liz. Hi, everyone, and thank you. My name is Nikki Ferreira. I'm the partnerships manager of Too Small to Fail. Too Small to Fail is the Clinton Foundation's early childhood initiative. We're really focused on families with young children 0 to 5 and helping parents and caregivers talk, read, and sing with their children from birth. We know that over half of children in the US are starting kindergarten unprepared, lagging behind peers in critical language, math, and social emotional skills. And so our goal is to really meet families where they are in everyday places and spaces that they go with their children, not only with resources to help support children's early brain and language development, but also sometimes by physically transforming spaces and creating environments that help promote those parent-child interactions that really build children's brains and help them learn. So I'm so excited to be with you all here today and excited to learn from you and with you.
Thanks, Nikki. You have so much to offer. Can't wait. And Sarah, this time I'll say it about you, last but not least.
Hi, I'm Sarah Plumetallo. I'm Right Brain Books National Director of Education Partnerships and 21st CCLC Support. Here at Right Brain, we work to make young people of all ages published authors of original storybooks they create in a very disguised learning process that's exciting and not exhausting. And so our mission is to foster self-esteem and elevated expression in anyone of any age by offering innovative, fun, and engaging programs that help students to discover and develop inspired ideas, which they then learn how to express successfully. We work really hard to provide project-based social emotional skills building literacy platforms for all students pre-K through 12. And we even do adult education and really so that they can develop, share, and value their voices. One thing I want to make a note of, this is my first year not running a 21st century community learning center summer program. So to all of our practitioners that are watching live today or recorded, I just want to say that people who show up to be with our kids in summer, to teach them in summer, see them in summer, love them in summer, give them opportunities in summer. You're all educators, whether or not you have formal accreditation, and we love, appreciate, and celebrate you for all that you do to make summer learning possible for America's children.
Aw, thank you, Sarah. I missed it too. I miss being with the kids too. Thank you for that. And I used Right Brain as a librarian and as an administrator, watching what libraries were doing with it was just such a joy. A really lovely project.
It really is.
From you. Yeah. And Sandra, anything you want to add? I know you wear multiple hats in the world. So anything else you want to tell us?
I mean, I'm an author, an artist, an art therapist. I work with Scholastic and with source books for publishing my books. I've really embraced the young child. You know, I think that first 1,000 days of a child's life, research, you know, bears out it's the most important time for developing the brain of a child, a healthy brain. So my books are interactive. I'm known for a novelty format. I invent all kinds of things like ears on books and blankets and all kinds of interactive ways that a caregiver, a parent, a grandparent can really interact with that child and help, start them on the right path to being joyful and happy kids.
It's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for your work. And I just want to mention that attendees, you can win a raffle prize of signed copies of Sandra's books and an Amazon Echo for Kids with their new program, Reading Sidekick Today. There's going to be a raffle for people who registered. So stay tuned for that. And now I'm going to turn us to think a little bit about literacy and the summertime. And if we could just reflect on this last year, this last most difficult year and the work that we've all been leading, what kind of different modes did you use to operate summer programs, or what have been some of the lessons learned for providing literacy through the COVID pandemic and now as we come out of it? And I'll leave that open to anyone who wants to answer.
I'd love to jump in if that's okay.
Please.
I think for me, having run a program last summer in the height of COVID, I found that because students were so used to being behind a screen, and they still were on a screen, because they were so used to that, there was a reluctance, maybe more so than there normally would be, for anything that seemed like a task or a lesson or an objective. There was kind of more pushback than maybe we would normally see if we were face to face in a classroom. And so I think for me, it elevates the importance of making sure that learning is something that feels fun, that feels inspiring, that feels engaging, but is fully disguised, because at the end of the day, we know it's got to be, especially in summer, really robust, rigorous, because that's the time where we can make these accelerated gains and prevent all of this loss. So I think for me, that's the number one thing that sticks out, is ensuring that, our summer programs are something that students want to do and want to be present and, see the purpose in, without feeling like it's yet another thing to do or a task, or they're missing out on another opportunity. So I think really the importance of creating engaging experiences for students that are academically rigorous is really, really key. That's been my primary takeaway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. And, as I think about this last year, Nikki, the work that Too Small to Fail leads really comes to mind about how you meet families where they are. Maybe you could just tell folks a little bit about summer learning and laundromats.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, I'd love to take a step back and just share a little bit more about Too Small to Fail. A big part of our focus is leveraging those everyday moments that children and families have together. So moments like time at the laundromat, or diaper time, or playtime. Those are all, we know, those are all learning opportunities. And for really busy and stressed parents, they love to, they would love to read with their child for 30 minutes, an hour a day. For so many parents, though, that's just not doable, because they're focused on so many other things. And especially this past year, they've been stressed and overwhelmed. And the idea of adding another thing to their to-do list, even if it's reading with their child, which is something that they would normally enjoy, it's just very stressful. And so at Too Small to Fail, like I said, we're really interested in taking advantage of those everyday moments, those things that parents are already doing with their children, and helping them kind of make it a 2-for-1. So they're going to the grocery store and running their errands, but they can also talk with their kids about the shapes and colors of produce, and, holding an apple and a grape in the hand and saying, which one's heavier, which one's lighter. That's all language, that's all learning, that's all literacy. And so that's a huge part of the work that we aim to do. And so Liz, you mentioned our work in laundromats. We've long partnered with the Laundry Cares Foundation and the Coin Laundry Association to meet families in laundromats across the country. We've done a few different things in this partnership. It started out with distributing kind of posters and parent tip sheets to 5,000 laundromats across the country. In the past couple of years, we focused on physically transforming laundromats into spaces to promote early learning and parent-child interactions. And most recently this summer, we're really excited, and I'm happy to share a little bit more about this in depth later, but partnering with the Laundry Cares Foundation and Noggin, which is Nickelodeon's interactive learning service for preschoolers, as well as Sparkler's Big Heart World campaign on a program called Big Heart World Loads of Summer Love. And that project is really focused on social emotional learning and social emotional development and promoting that through laundromats. So yeah.
Amazing, thank you. And Bernard, when we're thinking about the ways that the school year connects to summer learning, I wonder if you, from your perspective of working with schools during the school year, can tell us how you see the kinds of reading initiatives and literacy initiatives that we're talking about, how that helps when kids come back to school in the fall.
Yeah, that's a tremendous help. So that, you can tell when kids have been, working on things during the school year, and then they continue on in the summer, and then they come back in the fall. There's a huge difference, right? And one of the things that our program really tried to do this year was how do we send kids off with more tools and equipment? And so we recorded videos, and we sent every kid home with like a little toolkit of books and puzzles and flashcards, and really just we utilized a lot of resources that we didn't spend on in-person activities during the year. And we just said, okay, we couldn't do in-person stuff to a degree, but like, how do we use these same funds but continue to support kids through the summer? So that's kind of one of the things we kind of did, was really trying to send kids and really address those those gaps in equities in terms of like books at home and materials at home that some families don't have.
Yeah, the book desert is real, right? And we know that book ownership is such an important part of literacy. I wonder, this is just really off the cuff, but I wonder if any of you have any good ideas for how to get more books into the hands of kids during the summer.
We actually have a partnership with a 21st CCLC program near Harrisonburg, Virginia, called the Gus Bus. And one of the things they're doing is they're bringing literacy, both reading and writing, to communities through their bus. It's literally a mobile bus, and they take it to different stops that are centered around populated areas. And the students engage in reading, and they're also using our Right Brain resources to teach students creative writing. So at the end of the summer, these kids, because they're bringing it to them through this innovative partnership with JMU, they're able to both get books to read, and they're authoring books themselves and sharing those books with other kids. So I think finding community organizations like that you can leverage partnerships between, taking advantage of 21st Century Community Learning Center funding the absolute most that we can, so long as Congress will continue to authorize it. I think those are existing partnerships we can leverage even more.
In our community, I can share that our library has been absolutely the heart of it, creating book boxes together that kids are given books. We also work with Bright Futures. There's also been with 1,000 books before pre-K, where that initiative is alive and well here. We're also having book libraries, little boxes all over the village where folks can borrow a book, take one, put one in, sort of have a revolving door. And then this idea of the story walk has been really great, where books are now part of the environment. So that takes it into a new format that I think is exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Nikki, do you want to share about the story walks that you've done?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've partnered, well, I'd say that, Too Small to Fail, as Liz knows, is a small and mighty team. We're a team of 8 running a nationwide initiative. And so really the way that we're able to do that is through leveraging partnerships. And we've had a longstanding, amazing partnership with Landscape Structures, who is a leading playground manufacturing company. And we worked with them to create story trails of a book that we created called DJ's Busy Day. And it's all, and that book features, it's a story about a family going through a busy day in kind of everyday environments, and it takes you through this family's daily journey that probably mirrors the day in the life of a lot of families. And in addition to reading the story, which the story trails can go on a nature path or a river walk, or just on a playground when there are playground or park with a lot of space. We've tried to use these story trail panels not only to show the pages of the story, but also to include special talk tips. So these talk tips are kind of going beyond the story and providing parents and caregivers like, hey, here's a way that you can talk about the characters or talk about the setting of the book, or compare how this character is feeling to how you're feeling right now, or how you might feel within, you know, if you were in this character's position. So not only reading, but reading the actual story on the story trail, but extending that learning to parent-child or caregiver-child conversations as well.
Yeah, that caregiver-child connection is just so critical and so important. You know, I used to hear it said that a picture book is a museum for the lap. And I think that's kind of true, but you know, Sandra, as an author, I see that your books develop such a bond between a caregiver and child when read aloud, even just reading to us. I could feel that bond happening for us. Can you talk about how you see reading builds attachments?
Yeah, I mean, and again, here the research is undeniable. It is absolutely, you know, that first 1,000 days, it's incredible. And the bonding between the mother and a child, or a caregiver and a child, happens right away. The literature really talks about even reading to premature babies, because that really matters. Also prenatally, reading as well. We know that it increases the bonding between the mother and the child and a parent right away. It builds on intimacy, which is so important. You look at psychologists who are working with the failure to thrive problem with young infants who don't have that kind of bonding. It doesn't exist if there's reading and connection, because not only are you reading, you're also holding. So there's physical touch. So important. We know that a better voice recognition happens because of reading. Improved language skills are a part of that, as well as setting that brain, because 90% of a child's brain develops in that first 3 years. So all of the infrastructure and that architecture, if you will, is just being built right there for reading and math and social emotional learning, as well as cognitive skills. So it's undeniable that those first years of reading are just essential in creating a strong attachment. And that's why we really build in a lot of these play factors within every moment. As Nikki said, every single moment a parent spends with a child, we're building an opportunity to read a story, to interact, to connect with the child. I always like to say each book helps a person connect one heart at a time. And that's really the goal. I mean, we really want those connections and those bonds to be made, from bedtime to brushing your teeth time, to bath time, to play time, to eating time. I mean, these are all the moments of our life that really matter, and we can build programs and books that celebrate that and help make those connections even greater.
I totally agree with that. And Bernard, I wonder about reading aloud with older kids, and reading aloud when a kid is able to read themselves. Is that still important?
Absolutely. And, I think what Nikki was even describing is like kind of the things we teach our young men is like, how do you read a book? How do you ask those good questions, predictive questions about the context setting? And it's that kind of training that, we teach our young men to do, that they carry through with like their own like careers, maybe in education, but also just like as young adults and young men who may be brothers, cousins, fathers someday, right? It is that community, like starting a community of readers, and increasing that literacy is a social determinant of health. And how do you really teach that to young men, that this is important?
Yeah, we have to model it and practice it, right? There's a question in the chat that I'm going to ask everybody here. I think getting books in the hands of children and families are great. How do you get them to read books when reading's not fun for them or of interest to them or their family? Anybody got any tips or tricks?
I'd actually love to lead off on that one.
Thank you.
And I'm going to kind of flip the script a little bit because obviously Right Brain, we talk about writing, but I think sometimes we lose the connection between reading and writing and how critical it is in developing as reciprocal processes. But I think also sometimes we forget that you might be a reluctant reader because you're an even more reluctant writer. When you enjoy writing or you see the purpose in writing or the value in writing, you can appreciate an author's craft more. And then maybe you want to dive into a certain type of writing that an author has done because you want to examine their craft from the perspective of an author. So I think if we can facilitate children and families in enjoying the creative writing process, having fun, gamifying it in some of the ways, that we have with our programs, you will then see kids want to find out, how does this author take on characters? What have they chosen to do with their perspective taking? And, how do they utilize descriptive language? I think students and children and families become more curious about something when it's active and not just passive. And not to say that reading is a passive endeavor at all. It is not, but to really see it for its fullness and its richness, I think having that perspective as a writer reading for the purpose of understanding the writing process and understanding authoring can be really powerful. And I think that's something we don't leverage a whole lot. So I would say also think about that, and don't just think about how do we get them to read, how do we get them to write so that they'll understand the purpose of writing for an audience or writing for enjoyment, and then they'll seek out books that they want to read because they're books they would have wanted to write.
I actually have a library example of that I just have to tell you guys. So I was doing some writing with third graders years and years ago, and Christopher Paul Curtis, who's one of my favorite children's authors, I read aloud from Bud Not Buddy, which is a touching, hilarious, beautiful novel. And one of the kids in my writing club, I read a passage aloud, and there was a little pause at the end, and this kid looked at me and looked at everybody else and said, "Dang, how does he do that?" But that's exactly it, right? He was a better understander and purveyor of writing because he understood how hard it is to get narration down. And I want to stay on writing for just a second, and then maybe we'll come back to this question. But Sarah, can you talk about, we've been talking about social emotional learning. Can you talk about how writing can really help during this time of COVID recovery, where we know social emotional skills are just so critical to help build and lift up for our youth?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things I always think about is that writing allows us to express ourselves in a way that can either be reflected to others or back to ourselves. We can reread our words to make sense of our own emotions, or we can share them to communicate socially and emotionally with another human being. Writing can allow children to make the choice to either express their emotions and thoughts outright in a personal narrative form, writing literally about their own experiences as themselves, or they can choose to disguise that if they feel safer and more willing to be vulnerable in the form of coming up with a character that reflects their experiences and their emotions. They can process things that are happening to them or they're seeing happen or happening to someone they love through writing, and you can communicate right back to them with that. One of the things I also think about is that when I grew up, I always kept a journal. I had a diary. I would write in it all the time. And I feel like one of the things we've lost sort of is this art of journaling or keeping a diary or writing as a daily practice, a routine. And so I think that building social emotional learning through that kind of routine is so key. And so that's one of the things that we focused on a lot here at Right Brain, is embedding that social emotional learning in everything that we do, from the characterization activities and published authors programs to journaling with Journal Jam, or, even through our WRAP program, Wrap It Up. We always try and bring it back to social emotional learning along with those other things, because we have to focus on whole student development, and social emotional learning is one part of that equation. We also want to add in that project-based learning. We want to add in English language arts for our English learners, English language development, and of course STEM, but we can't forget to embed that social emotional learning in there. And I think recognizing the opportunity that students have to express themselves in a safe way through writing is so key, because they can respond to characters' emotions when they read, but they can't always make that connection as easy. They would have to then say, I felt, or I connected to this because, whereas in writing, they can create a character that embodies what they're feeling without ever having to say that's them. They can express that emotion that way. So I think it's really, really key for us to see the power that writing can hold in processing emotion, in just getting it out there, even if you don't go any further, just getting it out so you're not holding it all in.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
If I could just piggyback on that, and thank you, Sarah, that was so well said. In terms of coming from the side of the publishers and authors, I'm seeing in publishing so many more books that are about feelings, about social emotional education, not just character development. Many of the workbooks that are being developed post-COVID and even during COVID, we even created a journal for families to help process what kids and families dealt with during COVID, socially and emotionally. But all kinds of workbooks are being created now, so kids are really learning and being educated about feelings and expressing it, and tools for their toolbox of how to deal with emotions that are sometimes difficult and can be frightening. So I think as a publishing representative, I think they're really great news on that front. We're seeing many more books being published that really address this head on. I also think environment matters in terms of this, because I know when I was a little girl, we used to walk to the bookmobile, and it was the only game in town that had air conditioning. And we would love to sit inside of the air conditioned bookmobile. And
we hear that a lot in libraries.
Yes, we love that. Yes. So environment really matters too in that way. Practicality.
And Bernard, I'm thinking about the push for diverse books and the national campaign, We Need Diverse Books. Can you talk about how in your program you embed culturally affirming practices into literacy activities? I think we'd all love to hear more.
Yeah, and as the question kind of was relating to, like, how do you get children to read books and get interest? I think that's what I was thinking of too, right? And the big concept I think that we're all trying to reach is, how do you create a sense of belonging for students, kids, families? And that kind of can be communicated in many different messages, but it's like, do you feel like you're invited into this space, into this program, into this book? That can start from like just staff and the diversity of your staff, to the actual content of the book and the representation of characters and cultures and themes in a book. So that's kind of the things we kind of try to do. So one, like our staff, we hire young men of color to be our literacy tutors. So it makes reading, it makes rhyming, it makes these little silly games that we play seem more cool, more fun, more interesting, because now it's a young man of color doing it. But we also we try to cultivate a wide list of books that also represent a diversity of characters and cultures, so that kids can see themselves in the books, can see they can see maybe their brothers, their sisters in the books. They can see the culture represented in a book, right? That matters. And we don't realize sometimes that how those little messages kind of say, oh, this is not for me, and that also leads to the biggest thing, is like word of mouth. And so if you have a good experience, right, then that really does snowball into how do you create and change the culture and climate of a school, a program, a community.
Yeah, absolutely. We heard Marin say, those teen volunteers really mattered to her. They were cooler than the adults. Nikki, can we just zoom back out to early childhood for a second? And can you tell us about play? We know play is a really critical part of early literacy and learning. And do you have any suggestions for how to embed play and joyful learning into early literacy, or bake that cake altogether?
Yeah, and absolutely. This was actually something that I wanted to suggest from this question around how to get families and kids interested in reading. I think that one, play is learning. I think that's just something that we should definitely recognize. I also think that if a child's a reluctant reader, it's not like the only way to share a story is to sit down on a chair and on a couch and read a book together. There's a way to really bring stories to life through play. And that might be a child and their caregiver, their siblings, acting out a story that they're reading together and being different characters and making it fun and engaging, something that's more active, so that they're still reading and they're still learning, but they're also doing it in a way that makes it more accessible and fun to them.
That's lovely. It's really beautiful. Play is learning. Yeah. Oh my gosh, you guys, we're almost out of time. This is my favorite subject, and this hour is blowing by so quickly. Sandra, maybe you can kind of give us some closing thoughts here. As an author, all of us and on this webinar today are people thinking about program development and program practice, and with program providers who are really trying to find the best ways to help kids, like Erin said at the top of this. What would you want us to know about using books and writing and play in our programs from an author's perspective and through the stages of development that kids are in our programs?
Thank you, Liz. I think that's a really important question. And I think every single panelist here today is engaging kids in individual and unique and really meaningful ways. I'm so impressed with the work that each one of you are doing with kids, and it makes a difference and you're changing lives. And thank you. Really, it's just so inspiring to hear the work that you're doing. But I think we all know that at the heart of it all, it's simply spending time together by reading together, playing, reading out loud is an amazing way to show our children that we care for them and that they're loved. And it's that simple. It's about belonging, as Bernard said. It's about everyday moments that Nikki said. It's about getting kids to share their individual, beautiful, unique spirit, the way Sarah said. And when we as adults, any of us, sit with a child of any age, we let them know that they matter. And that's what's important, because they do matter. And they will grow to be joyful, healthy, loving, productive, happy adults if they feel a sense of belonging and they can connect with others on the planet. And I think each and every one of these programs is doing that. And that's what we all should strive to do, I think.
What a beautiful response and a beautiful way for us to wrap up today. Thank you all. It just is such a joy to work with all of you and know all of you in support of helping our kids and bringing them joy in their learning and increasing their outcomes. But certainly building that love is the most critical thing I think we can be doing right now. And books and writing and all the literacy that we can bring certainly are a wonderful vehicle for transmitting that love. I think we have 2 minutes left, and I believe Leslie or Erin is going to close us out here.
Yes, thank you, Liz. Just on behalf of the NSLA, I want to say thank you to Liz, our moderator, and to all of our panelists. Thank you all of us for joining us today and for Summer Learning Week 2021. We hope you've enjoyed the conversations this week. I just want to say look out for a follow-up email next week with links to resources from many of this week's speakers. And remember that our early bird registration is open, so you can sign up on our website, summerlearning.org. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, everybody. Have fun reading and writing this weekend. And thank you to our panel.